Returning to my Coin Lady channel, I am pleased to see you again. His behavior regarding the economy, his actual policies, and his future actions are becoming a lot more predictable, although it seems like Trump throws a curveball every other day. I wanted to share some important information with you guys about QE, or quantitative easing, and the Fed and how it will impact markets in the near future, not in the short term, but definitely close to the date we're at now. And with that, I have a pretty good idea of XRP and its potential price action now, heading towards the end of this year. Naturally, crypto assets will have a significant upswing from here, but before we get into that, I'd want to discuss the last occasion the Federal Reserve employed quantitative easing, or QE. Quantitative easing, in case you were wondering, is when the Federal Reserve begins buying huge corporations' balance sheets while simultaneously printing a ton of money. So, initial QE was gained in March of 2020, when the Fed launched an aggressive quantitative easing program in response to the pandemic. At the time, they bought over $700 billion worth of assets, which naturally led to $700 billion more money entering the market than before. In November of 2021, the Federal Reserve declared that it would start to reduce the rate at which it bought assets. Looking at the price charts around this time also reveals something really intriguing, and I want to present it to you. By looking back to March of 2020, we can observe that the entire market experienced a slight decline. Actually, on March 15th, the price of one Bitcoin dropped from roughly $5,000 to around $5,385. This is a precipitous 50% drop from its February high of $10,000. Additionally, Bitcoin experienced its first, fairly robust rally following the Fed's quantitative easing program. Actually, in May, it jumped from $5,000 to roughly $10,000 per coin. What transpired the following year, however, following a more robust QE or money printing, was astonishing. I mean, we witnessed Bitcoin's price rise from $5,000 to $40,000 per coin in the outset, and then, naturally, we witnessed its price reach $60,000 per coin somewhere around April. When compared to what was previously observed, this is very remarkable. Bitcoin reached a price of $64,000 per coin just before the Fed ended QE in November. The Federal Reserve's announcement that it would be shifting from quantitative easing, QE, to quantitative tightening, QS, i.e. increasing interest rates, triggered another massive sell-off in the cryptocurrency market, and Bitcoin's price eventually bottomed out at about $16,000 per coin. Quantitative easing did have a huge effect on the market, as we went from $64,000 at the height of the market, when it was also at its pinnacle, to $16,000 per coin 5 months later. But the real question everyone should be asking is, how long until QE impacts the stock and cryptocurrency markets? And how can we make money off of this? According to the previous example, when QE was first implemented in March of 2020, there was a strong initial effect in the months of March to May, with a solid increase of nearly 100%. Then, shortly after, or almost a year later, the real effects of this began to show, and the price of a coin went from $5,000 to $60,000. In other words, roughly about 1 year later, after quantitative easing commenced, we saw the markets hit these insane all-time highs that were more than 10x of the price when it had begun, and about a year and a half later, in around, November of 2021, that's when we saw the markets actually peak. So around a year to a year and a half following quantitative easing is when you should expect the majority of the price activity to peak up and approach those levels. This has been the case with numerous previous cycles of quantitative easing as well. Take the financial crisis of 2008 to 2009 as an example. That's when the Federal Reserve started using its Money for Team strategy to rescue the banks. In response to your query, the short answer is yes, but we still haven't witnessed this phenomenon a full year or more following quantitative easing. Now that quantitative easing has started, it is going full steam ahead. However, unlike the $700 billion in asset purchases that occurred during COVID, the Federal Reserve has not lowered interest rates or printed as much money. Not to mention that it's not certain that it will occur again. I want to make that very obvious, but eventually the Fed will have to do something, or the US economy will move on and slip into a recession. Which brings me to a next point in this video. The Fed's QE program begs the question, why? Well, they're trying to keep the economy from going off the rails by avoiding negative GDP growth. Since printing money devalues the currency and raises the inherent value of everything else, it leads to ongoing inflation and asset price hikes. Am I correct? Of course, your cost of groceries, your cost of the stocks, everything is going to go up because, of course, the value of the dollar goes down. There's more dollars flowing as well, which implies more people are buying items. With more money flowing into businesses, they will be able to crank out more goods and services, which is great for the economy. Quite a few other central banks, over the past 2 centuries have used similar tactics, you know. It all began with the Dutch, who are engaging in this practice to fund mercenaries, who would essentially assault foreign nations in order to plunder their products. We now see the United States government engaging in comparable practices during times of war and pandemics, when system liquidity is essential. War isn't necessarily the result of massive money printing, nevertheless, it does help increase liquidity, which in turn helps businesses, banks, and pretty much everyone else benefit from a larger money supply. However, I maintain my position that cryptocurrency stands to gain the greatest. This occurred when the price of Bitcoin increased by more than 10 times its prior level. And I want to be very clear, the current Bitcoin price action has not been driven by QE, it's been driven by ETFs, and that's another significant stimulus for XRP. So here's the deal, right? Basically, a year and a half after every single cycle, that's when we see the peak for Bitcoin. So when will we see the top for XRP? May I inquire about the expected release date? From $5 to $20 each coin. The solution is complex and depends on the Federal Reserve, but we need to keep an eye out for quantitative easing. At what point does it start, and what stage of the cycle are we in? All you have to do is ask yourself that. Then, you need to take a look about 12 months to 2 years after the QE has essentially taken place. All right. When that time comes, you should definitely start selling off some of your assets, so you can cash in on the massive price action that is likely to have occurred between the years of 2018 and 2019. That is the essence of it. It shouldn't be tied to a certain time or date. You will generate income by basing it on the Federal Reserve's actions and the money supply. Now, observe the actions of the Federal Reserve. Is money being printed? Very well, executed. The tsunami is inevitable, so get in while you can at the cheap prices and wait for the appreciation to happen. It may sound too easy to be true, but the truth is that most people don't know anything about what I just told you. That is all, folks. Just make sure you soak it all in and purchase these dips. Seeing my video is an honor. When you're done, hit that subscribe button and let me know what you think.